Hello everyone, welcome back to TH Designs. Today we are doing not a typical series video that we tend to do on this channel. Today we are doing kind of a one-off conceptual idea, and you obviously read it in the title. It's been something I've been very curious about for some time, and I thought why not make a video about it and talk about it a bit. And of course that idea is the concept of the wooden launch coaster. What does that look like? What does that even mean? Why are there really none out there? And I guess theoretically, what would that look like? Which is what we are building right now in Planet Coaster. There's probably a lot of people that react to that statement and say, well, what about Lightning Rod? Lightning Rod is probably one of the most famous examples out there of a wooden launch coaster. To be honest, I think it's the only one. It of course no longer has a launch to it. It used to have LSM fins on its lift, creating a launch mechanism up instead of a chain lift essentially. But they removed it for the 2024 season, and really that's the only example of a launch wooden coaster that we've really seen, at least as far as my knowledge goes. I guess before we actually jump into why we don't really see many of these and how this coaster and Planet Coaster would really work, I want to preface and say that there's a lot of engineering that goes into this. There's a lot of electrical features that go into it, especially with the LSMs versus the LIMs conversation that we're probably going to discuss. I'm no expert. I'm no expert at all. I like roller coasters. I like riding roller coasters. I like building roller coasters. So I don't know all the science behind it, but I will try my best to try and kind of get a grip of it. Essentially, the argument of why a wooden launch coaster doesn't really exist is really just because of what's in the name. It's a wooden coaster. And wood is very flexible. It moves a lot. It gives a lot of charm, which is why wooden coasters are still so common even today. But the reality is there's a lot of flexing and there's a lot of movement and there's a lot of vibration happening in a wooden structure, which gives it that really classic roar that you associate with a wooden roller coaster. But relative to launches, which are nowadays either LSM or LIM, more likely to not LSM, which really the difference is just one's more efficient than the other. They don't like those things. There needs to be literal millimeter accuracy on these types of launches, and ultimately that is really what gets in the way of why a wooden coaster likely wouldn't work, unless you had some kind of hybrid like you saw on Lightning Rod at Dollywood. That was a hybrid steel top track, so even in that sense it wasn't a true wooden coaster, I guess, if you wanted to call it that. It was a hybrid, so you would never really see this on a true wooden coaster, or at least in the sense that the launch would be wooden, which is what you're seeing me build right now. You see that invisible piece of track where the launch would be. That's me using no track limits and using the launch feature, which is an LSM launch, and I end up replacing it with the RMC launch feature that they just had into the game a few weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago at this point. That piece of track is steel. It really has to be steel. So you could make the argument that this actually isn't even a true wooden launch coaster. But this is realistically what it would look like if it were to exist. It would have to be steel. So that transition between the steel section of the launch and the wooden rest of the course might be a little bumpy, but really that's the only caveat you would have. You would just have to have a steel launch. With all those things said, I mean, no park is really going to gamble on something like this. It's just, there's no return on investment that's really that logical. It would be a mechanical nightmare. And like I keep referencing, Lightning Rod proved all those things. So after Lightning Rod, kind of tested this theory, and then, 6 years later, a little bit more, removed the LSMs that were on the launch, well, that kind of killed it for anybody else in the future. It's just a nightmare to keep up with maintenance. And ultimately the park's goal is to make money with these coasters. So as cool as that launch was, as cool as theoretically this launch would be on a wooden coaster, you're just not going to see it. What you are seeing me do that replacement track of the steel RMC bit with that LSM launch, which is, I kind of wanted to bring this up because those fins on that launch look more like LIMs than LSMs. I'm no expert. I just know kind of what they look like more or less from one another. LSMs are typically just singular fins, whereas LIMs are more of they have a gap between them, as you see there, and there's a fin on the train that goes through it. So I don't know if that's a bug or something, or if they got that wrong, or maybe I'm getting it wrong, which is very likely. But very interesting point. There was another LIM coaster, the Vekoma family launch coaster, that has that same track type. and it's called the LIM family launch coaster. So anyway, really interesting point there. Ultimately, this coaster, I guess let's talk about it a little bit before we end up jumping into the game file. The coaster's name is Timber Pulse, which is just a cute little way of kind of putting electricity into a natural wooden structure. I don't know, it felt cute. The launch itself is about 45 or 50 miles per hour, one of the two, I can't remember exactly, which kind of is another extension of this point, is that if you are going to have a launch on a wooden coaster, even with the steel track, you can't really go that fast. 50 is probably realistically your limit. I don't actually know how fast Dollywood's lift hill was on Lightning Rod, but I definitely wasn't more than 50. I would be very shocked. So that's kind of another thing. Most coasters nowadays, I feel like that have launches are typically trying to do very impressive speeds with these launches. So I guess if you were to see this, you would probably see it on a family coaster. But there's so many great options for family coaster models that launch that it just wouldn't make sense. After the launch for the coaster itself, I just kind of really did a basic terrain hugging kind of gravity group type of layout. You saw the Timberliner trains actually earlier in the video. Those are from Gravity Group. It's a very Gravity Group inspired layout, and also just kind of felt if there was to be a launch coaster like this, it would probably be very low to the ground, trying to maximize any of the speed that it did get from that launch. I'm working on what this launch would theoretically look like. It would get a lot of maintenance like I've been talking about, so I had a lot of scaffolding, a lot of catwalks, a lot of spaces for these engineers to walk on, because this launch would be a nightmare. But I knew I wanted this to be some kind of viewing platform for the guests, which when we jump into the file, you will see the final product. This video, this time lapse, is just the actual layout being built. I went ahead and did all the station building, the maintenance bays, the sidewalks, all that fun stuff, and we will talk about those later. But yeah, that's kind of really all there is to it. I mean, it is a very interesting concept, something that's maybe not really thought about that much, probably because it is fairly ridiculous, but hey, it's Planet Coaster. There's the freedom to do whatever we want, and with no track limits, we even more can do whatever we want. So why not? Unrealistic, sure, but definitely fun. So anyway, I think it's fair to jump into the file now, and let's actually take a look at the final product, and of course do the POV. Alright, here we are in the in-game file. Pretty nice. I like it a lot. I think it looks pretty cozy. Like I mentioned in the time-lapse portion, very inspired by a Gravity Group Timberliner, very low to the ground. Definitely big on some low airtime hills, big turns, pretty solid speed. You even see some like incorporations of like some train interaction with this underground bit that the sidewalk actually goes over, which as the train is kind of going in and out of its layout now, you see it dive underneath here, and if we jump in with it, you can see we have some kind of lit up lightning bolts. I don't know, kind of cute. I probably should have filled this with like mist or something too, but then it jumps in here and then just kind of does this finale run. But ultimately just kind of going for the really kind of cozy wooden theming with very nice deciduous kind of foliage around it. If we look at the stats here, it actually has extremely good stats, which it's a pretty short coaster. I don't know, this length isn't too unfamiliar for like this Gravity Group kind of style Timberliner trains, but I didn't think it would be like 6.5. That's pretty good. 4.65 feet, pretty solid. I mean, even then you saw it was at a 9 going into the brake run. So this is actually statistically probably one of my most efficient layouts. A max speed of 57. I'm not sure why, because this launch definitely doesn't break 50. Or maybe even here because we're going subterranean, I'm not sure. A max lateral G-force of 2.8 is pretty gnarly. I was doing a lot of massaging to try and bring that number down. I'm assuming that that's happening probably there or here, because before I kind of tweaked these, it was less. So it must be one of those two that's the culprit. Lateral G-forces I find are really hard to manage in this game. 2.8 is pretty rough. I'm thinking about doing a video that really pushes the limits of like the excitement rating, the fear rating, the different G-forces. How does Planet Coaster calculate these things? Because yes, those moments are steep, but I don't know if they're almost 3 Gs steep. 7 airtime moments, 2.5 seconds total of airtime. Not too bad at all. If we jump over to the launch, you can see those the LIMs. I think they are. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe somebody in the comments will know more than I do. If we look at that Vekoma launch that I had mentioned earlier, this has LIM like literally in the name, and this is what that launch looks like. So it's kind of hard to convince me that they're not. As for LSMs, if we grab this blueprint quick, that's much more LSM like. This is the straight up RMC version, so no track limits. and you see what I'm talking about. It's very strange. I don't know if I mentioned it in the time lapse, but lightning rod did not have LIMs. It had LSMs, much more like that other one I just deleted, not like this. So why they chose that is weird to me. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but here's the coaster at night. I don't usually do too much lighting, so I was pretty happy with the little lighting packages that we did for this thing. So I love all that, but as for the launch, this is the thing I wanted to mostly focus on for the night view. You may have noticed these lights here, and you could probably assume what's going to happen when this launches. It charges up and goes away. Little cute little detail. I liked it a lot. I thought it was fun. I've been trying to mess around with special effects and trigger sequences more than in the past, and I think that this is a pretty neat little example of that. Ultimately for this video, I just wanted to kind of do more than just a little build showcase, which is I guess ultimately what this is, but also to kind of briefly mention and talk about and discuss why we don't really see anything like this in real life, and if you were to, what this might look like. So I'm really curious what your guys' thoughts are. Would you want to see something like this in real life? I already know the vast majority of the community misses that lightning rod launch, so I can probably assume that most people would be very interested in riding something like this. Do you think we will ever see something like this? Do you think that there will have to be like technological advances before we ever see a wooden launch coaster? Because for all the reasons that I already mentioned, we're probably not going to see this in real life ever again, which is upsetting, especially as someone that's never been on lightning rod. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this filler video that I kind of stitched together, just kind of exploring a very conceptual idea while having a really nice excuse to build a little wooden coaster, something that I don't really do too often. So this was very fun. I hope you all enjoyed. Definitely let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on not only this build, but also just the idea across the board. I know there's people in the comments that know more about this stuff than I do, so I'm really curious if there's other reasons why we don't see something like this. So either way, do take care everyone, and enjoy the POV and the potential cinematic. I haven't decided if I'm going to do it yet. Thank you all, take care.